Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I know it's probably been a long day for you. We hope that we're going to provide you some good information in the accounts payable section of this conference. So we'll just get started here. Let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jay Wood. I'm the Director of Accounts Payable, Travel, and Disbursements. And I have with me Amber Schnick and Mona Sinha. So Amber, I'll let you introduce yourself while I put the screen up here.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amber Schneck, and I'm the Accounts Payable Lead.
And Mona, are you on yet? I think Mona's still logging in, so we'll give her just a second and we'll introduce her. So these are our presenters today. And so we'll talk about our agenda. I see Mona's joined us. Mona, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Mona Sinha, and I'm the Senior Financial Analyst for Travel Department for CSUSB.
Thank you, Mona. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about legal and audit requirements. And I know this is your last session of the day, and that's probably like one of the worst topics to talk about is something boring like legal and audit requirements, but I hope it'll bring some light to some of the things that we do. We're going to talk about accounts payable tips and tricks, and then travel do's and don'ts and quick tips for our travel operations. So I'm going to actually get it started today. What we'd like to do is ask you to hold your questions if you have any questions to the end of each one of these sessions, and we'll be glad to answer your questions. And if there's something today that we don't cover when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll be glad to answer any other questions that you might have or any specifics about what we've presented here today. So let's talk about legal requirements. So yes, we do have legal requirements here in the accounts payable area, and we'll cover some of those things here today. Tax reporting is a big key. A lot of people wonder why we ask for a W-9 or a 204 form, and essentially it's because we have tax reporting requirements. We are required to do certain reporting for certain payees for certain categories. So we have to make an analysis based on the individual, what their tax reporting, how they are tax reportable. And that comes through on the certification form, which is known as the 204 form, which is actually a state form, or the W-9 form, which is a IRS regulated form. We're required to withhold certain amounts and pay to the IRS if the payee fails to provide their certification via the W-9 or the 204 form. Our campus has taken the approach that we will not pay a payee until we receive that information, because there is backup withholding that we can actually perform. It's very convoluted, and we prefer not to do the backup withholding. So we require a W-9 or 204 form before we actually engage with the vendor. And something I thought was rather interesting, and a lot of people don't realize is did you know that if we pay something with funding that actually does not belong to CSUSB, that because we're the withholding agent, we are required to withhold or complete a tax reporting. So let me give you an example of that. So say a cash donation is made to CSUSB. CSUSB uses that money to pay for an individual to provide a talk or a lecture or some other type of function here on campus. CSUSB, we are the withholding agent. So we're obligated to report the payment as taxable income, even though the source of the funding was donated from an outside source. So it really doesn't matter whether it's CSU money or if it's outside money. If we're actually making the payment, we have to conduct the tax withholding or reporting. Okay. Assembly Bill 5. This is my least favorite topic because it's changed essentially how we do business with independent contractors. So since the introduction of Assembly Bill 5 in 2020, it's become way more difficult to categorize payees as independent contractors. It used to be that we could just say, you know, we've got an independent contractor, they're working independently, they provide their own materials, they hire their own workers, and so they're an independent contractor and we pay them. Assembly Bill 5 was the result of the gig workers industry. You also know it as Lyft, Uber, and DoorDash, organizations that hire gig workers. So Assembly Bill 5 took effect in 2020 and basically changed the way that we do business with independent contractors. So essentially now, under new AB 5 regulations, essentially all workers are considered employees until proven otherwise, not the other way around, which is what it used to be. Human Resources is tasked with determining whether or not we can classify a worker as an independent contractor or employee. And the state side and philanthropic both follow this process. And I've provided a link on this slide, and I believe these slides will also be made available. You can also just type in Google CSUSB independent contractors, and you'll be able to find these links for Human Resources. So on the state side and the philanthropic side, there's a long questionnaire that you have to go through and answer all the questions so that they can determine whether or not the employee can be designated as an independent contractor. It's a little bit different on the auxiliary side, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But basically, I wanted to kind of go through some of what Assembly Bill 5 kind of means. Essentially, they've created a new ABC test. You also may hear of this test known as the Dynamex test, but the ABC test is the more common name for this, to determine whether or not an individual can be paid as an independent contractor or not. So the questions are these three questions. And the first question is the worker free to perform services without the control or direction of the company? So what does this mean? This is the amount of control that the purported employer has over the worker. The more control that we would have over that worker, the more likely that the worker is actually an employee, should be designated as an employee and not an independent contractor. And I've got some examples for that. So let's say, for example, in this case, a truck driver is designated as an employee because the hiring entity required him to keep his truck clean, report to the dispatch center for assignments, and get prior approval before taking passengers. The hiring entity could also end the employment relationship if the driver was late, failed to contact dispatch, or violated the trucking company's written policy. Therefore, that person is actually designated as an employee. Let's talk about a different scenario. Knitters and sewers were provided patterns and materials to make children's clothing. Even though the workers were allowed to work at home at their own pace and their own hours, they were employees because they were giving a pattern to follow and were expected to stick to it. Now, here's an example of an individual who would not be an employee, who would be genuinely an independent contractor. So a construction company did not exert enough control over a historic restoration specialist who set his own schedule, worked without any supervision, used his own debit card to buy the materials, and declined the company's job offer so that he could work on his own. This person would actually be designated as an independent contractor. So the next factor is the worker performing tasks that are outside the usual course of the company's business. So what does this mean? Workers who provide services that are within the hiring entity's usual course of business are employees. These workers would ordinarily be viewed by others as employees of the company. So I'll give you some examples there. So let's say that I own a bakery and I hire someone to come in and decorate, extravagant wedding cakes or customized cakes on a regular basis. This person would be an employee because I'm a bakery, I do wedding cakes as a rule, and I'm hiring people to perform basically the same tasks. Now, let's say that same bakery hires a plumber to repair a leak in the bathroom. That would be an independent contractor because the course of my business is a bakery, not a plumbing shop. So that gives you some insight there. And then the last factor is the worker customarily engaged in an independently established trade or occupation or the business of the same nature that is involved in the work performed. So what does this mean? Hiring entities have to show that the alleged employees independently made the decision to customarily engage in established business or occupation of their own to provide the services rendered. So basically, that's a fancy way of saying that the individual, the independent contractor, has already an established business. So they've incorporated as a business, they advertise as a business, they bought business cards, they have obtained any business license, and they're making offers to provide business services to the public. So that would designate them as an independent contractor. So if we've asked somebody to come and perform some work for us and they have not provided a business to the outside public, then that would be more or less an employee type situation where we would bring that person on as an employee. So there's other factors that we actually have to consider as well. And those factors relate to whether or not the person that we're trying to designate as an independent contractor is currently an employee of the CSU or the auxiliaries. It also means that, are they an employee of the state of California? Is the worker a retiree of the CSU or any other state of California entity? Basically, we're all being paid from the same employer, which is the state of California. So if someone comes here to do an independent contractor type performance, and they say, let's just say, for example, they work for the Department of Motor Vehicles, they work for the state of California, they would be receiving a W-2 from their employer, which is the state of California. And if we hire them here, we would be giving them a 1099 as an independent contractor, which would be a red flag that that individual is probably not an independent contractor. It's probably designated as an employee. So those individuals that were designated as employees would have to be put into the payroll system and paid as employees for the services that they render for CSUSB. Now for ASI, Student Union, UEC, there's a determination of independent contractors form available on the Accounts Payable website. It's a little bit different of a process. So we're currently in the process of updating this questionnaire to make it easier to determine the status. And the auxiliaries actually have the option of adding in the Borello factors. So there are certain industries or professions that are carved out from Assembly Bill 5 that would apply to the auxiliaries. And it can be very complicated, so I won't go into all those details. But when you fill out the independent contractor form and send it on to me for review, I'll look at that and I'll make that determination then. And like I said, we're currently working on updating that independent contractor form. So let's talk about audit compliance. So we have a lot of requirements that we have to review. So we are constantly looking at not only being the fiduciary responsibility for the university funds, we need to make sure that we have required supporting documentation, that it's audit compliant, substantiates the expenditures, and we verify approvers and their authority. So when we get an invoice that says it's okay to pay, we need to make sure that's at the proper level. We validate the amount that we pay, the payee, and any tax reporting is in place before invoices are processed. We ensure that the approving department, I'm sorry, let me try that again. We assure that the department approving the goods and services provide the proper approval to pay. So you might have noticed that more recently, we are asking for specific language. This is authorized to pay. This is okay to pay. We need that specific language in order to meet proper audit requirements. And then, of course, we maintain documentation to support audits. So whenever we're audited, we're usually asked for a sampling of things, and then we have to provide that. And then they go back and look at how this was requisitioned. Was the approval appropriate at the requisition level? Was the goods received? Did we get the appropriate approval from the department? So there's a lot of things that we look out for, and we try to keep ourselves audit compliant and out of hot water. So that's my long-winded section of this. Is there any questions at this point for me? No questions for me? Okay, well, if you do have any questions, you know how to reach me. Email me or give me a call and we'll be able to answer any questions you might have. So I'll turn it now over to Amber, who will talk about accounts payable tips and tricks. And I'm controlling this, I'm sharing the presentation. So Amber, when you're ready for me to move on to the next screen, just let me know.
Will do. Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to be giving some information in the accounts payable department that we commonly come across just to help you through your day. So if you're a new employee, this might be helpful or might be a good refresh for those of you who are existing employees or have been here for many, many years. Can you go to the first slide, Jay? So I've put some tips here. These are some of the common questions that we get in the accounts payable office, or just some common paperwork that we receive, and we typically have to either reject them or we have to return them for updates or corrections. One of the things that we've been rejecting recently, and I just wanted to make everybody aware, we can transfer now through accounting services funds between ASI, Student Union, and CSUSB. Accounts payable no longer cuts checks to those 3 business units, the reason being that they all share the same bank account. So I just wanted to make you all aware that if you are issuing a payment to one of these 3 business units, ASI, Student Union, or CSUSB, and the funds are coming from one of these 3 business units, you can handle that through, or that is handled through accounting services. They have Sharewell, and you can submit a request, and it's called an inter-unit transfer. And if you have any questions regarding that process, please reach out to accounting services directly. I'd hate for you to do all the paperwork, get the signatures, send it over to AP. It sits for a couple days before we turn around and we reject it and say, sorry, this is not the proper procedure and it's not the proper way of processing the paperwork. The next thing I wanted to touch on is we've noticed lately that, because we understand stateside has its procedures, and sometimes the procedures can be lengthy or cumbersome, or it's just like, I don't want to deal with this. So we've noticed that some people are paying using other business unit funds. So they may be paying with UEC, Philanthropic, ASI, or Student Union. And then they're turning around and they're requesting a reimbursement invoice through accounting services. And they're asking for a CSUSB to reimburse that business unit. The problem is because CSUSB has specific rules, we're probably going to ask that you still follow those rules in order for us to reimburse those business units. So what we're asking is if you could just not go the path of least resistance and make sure that you do the proper procedure from the get-go. That way we don't have to worry about any holds up as far as processing. When it comes to petty cash reimbursements, once COVID hit us, petty cash reimbursements through Student Financial Services went away. We have not reestablished them at our university, and as far as I know, there's no plan to reestablish them. So I just wanted to remind everyone that there's no need to send us petty cash forms to the accounts payable office. You can just send it reimbursements on a direct expenditure form or a disbursement check request form. And what we'll do is we will reimburse through a check or direct deposit. It will no longer be through cash. Next slide, Jay. One of the other things that we've seen recently, and we've had to not necessarily reject them, but we've had to return just to get the approval. If you're hosting an event on campus, campus catering, Chartwells has first right of refusal. So we just want to make sure that you're reaching out to them first, getting that first right of refusal. And if you do, let's say you hired Dickey's Barbecue from across the street, of course that would go through a PO, but I'm just letting you know that you would need to make sure that you got the first right of refusal from Chartwells, and then you need to attach that first right of refusal either to your requisition, or you would attach it if you're doing a reimbursement through the hospitality form, and you need to attach it to that documentation so we have it. Otherwise, we're going to turn around and we're going to ask you for it. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Next slide. Okay, I also wanted to touch on what's a valid receipt. We've recently received, you see how there's 2 receipts in front of us. We've either received the one on the left or we've received the one on the right. We haven't received the 2 together. So I just wanted to go through what is a valid receipt in the accounts payable's eyes when we are doing reimbursements. So say, for instance, you took colleagues out to a lunch, or let's say you're hosting a new candidate that's coming in. So you're taking them out to lunch, let's say Dickey's Barbecue across the street, and now you're submitting it on a hospitality form, seeking reimbursement. These are the two receipts that we want to see. We want to see the one receipt, which is on the right, which itemizes the items purchased. So we need to see that a quesadilla, steak salad, lounge, burger. It lets us know also typically how many people were at the meal so that we can confirm the number of attendees there. We'll try to match that information up. It's telling us who's purchased, or excuse me, what the business name is. It's telling us the date that the transaction took place. And now the receipt on the left. This one is telling us that it has been paid. It's telling us any tips that's been added and the total amount being purchased. So I just want to show you, this is what we're looking for when we ask you for a valid receipt. And when we say itemized, the reason we're asking for itemized is if you look on the receipt on the right, you'll see right there that there's a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine. Well, on the state side, you can't use state funds unless it's a trust fund and it allows for it. You can't use state funds to purchase alcohol. So to this is a red flag. We need to know that that's being purchased so we can say, I'm sorry, this is not a reimbursable item. We'll remove the $22 from the reimbursement and we'll reimburse you for the balance. Hope that makes sense. Jay, next slide. Okay, I kind of already went over this, but I'm going to go through these two. The invalid receipts here, the reason that they're invalid is you see on the left side, there's nothing itemized. I have no idea what you purchased. I can see the total amount there, $148.58. I can see the date, I can see the time, I can see where you went. So I can see that you clearly went out to lunch or dinner. I just have no idea what you purchased. So I can't confirm that the funds being used are allowable. I also can't confirm the number of attendees. I can't confirm, there's many things that are missing in this case. The one on the right, while it's itemized, it doesn't tell me that it was paid for. It's very hard for me to read. I'm sure some people could understand what it's saying. Like I see mango juice, iced tea, Dr. Pepper, tofu. I don't know what the rest is. I can assume based on reading this that there might not be alcohol purchased. But if there's ever a handwritten receipt, we need you to write next to it what it is that's being purchased, or request that they provide you with some kind of receipt on their company letterhead showing their business name and then the itemized items being the list of the items being purchased. Okay, next receipt or next slide. So I also wanted to go over what's a proper invoice, because unfortunately, this slows down our processing when we have to keep returning invoices to vendors and or departments and saying that these are not valid invoices. We need you to add, or we need the vendor to add, not you. Sorry, the departments should not be adding this information. We need them to add certain information. I think the most common that we see are missing are invoice dates and invoice numbers. The invoice date is very important because it lets us know if there's a PO out there in the terms of the agreement or net 30 that we need to pay net 30 from that invoice date. Without an invoice date, we're just guessing. And we could put 2 years from now and then the vendor will never get paid. That's not what we want. We want the vendor to get paid. The invoice date's another important one. The reason that, or excuse me, the invoice date, the invoice number is an important one because it lets us know, okay, so let's say it's invoice 101. So when we remit payment to that vendor, they know then this is the invoice that's being paid from the state of California. It's very easy for us to reconcile with them, just as it should be easy for them to reconcile as well, that this is the payment that I'm receiving for the services that I did on invoice number 101, for example. So here's the list of the things that are most important. We need the name invoice written on here as well. We've also had like sales orders, confirmations, quotes. We receive a lot of different things that are not invoices. So I just want to make sure that the word invoice is actually written on the invoice. Unique invoice number, we need their name and their address because we need to know where to remit the information, where we're going to send payment. We need our company name and our address because we need to know that they're billing us. We commonly see that they're billing individuals on campus. So they're billing a dean, they're billing a faculty member, they're billing a staff member. That's not acceptable. They need to bill the CSUSB because we are the customer, CSUSB, not the individual, because I'm sure none of you want to pay from your paycheck for these bills. You want CSUSB to fit the bill. A summary description. So we need to know what we're paying for. If they're a guest speaker and they came on this date and they came at this time, we need to know all of that information. If they lectured on this specific topic, we need a detailed summary description letting us know what did they do for the campus. So date of the invoice, I kind of already went over. We need to know how much they're charging us. If we were being charged for goods, we need to know that breakdown of 4 items were purchased at $25. Therefore, we owe the campus, or the campus owes them $100. The total amount payable, so that includes freight, sales tax, and then the payment terms are not as important. It's important, but it's not as important. So we wouldn't reject an invoice if it didn't have the payment terms, because we could look at the PO and figure out the payment terms. The purchase order is very important. This is probably one of the things that is missing a lot of the times, and our invoices sit until we can figure out what the PO number is. So we try to reject them back to the vendor and say, please provide us with the invoice number. And it's just, it becomes a process where we're constantly asking for something in order to get the invoice processed, and it just takes much longer to get it processed, and we don't want to spend that much time processing an invoice if we can get it paid right away. Next slide, please. Here's some examples of, these are not invoices, but these are what are submitted to us as invoices. A quote I had mentioned earlier, a sales order, so it could be like a confirmation that the goods are going to be shipped to us. The one in the bottom center is an email. Fortunately, we cannot accept emails. It needs to be something that clearly states it's a invoice. Off to the right, it says estimate. Again, that's like a quote. Very similar. It's not allowed. That's what procurement's looking for, but it's not what accounts payable is looking for. And then in the dead center, you'll see right there how it says okay to pay. It's got a signature, it's got a chart field string, so it looks like it's a valid invoice, but there's quite a few things missing. I don't know where to send payment for Lou Ricardo. They're not billing CSUSB. There's no invoice number, there's no invoice date, there's no PO number. So there's several things missing here. So just to kind of point out why we're asking for all of that information, it's just very important. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions regarding how to create an invoice, or your vendors have any questions on how to create an invoice, we do have a guide on our website. I highly recommend that they review this guide. It also has examples on how to create invoices, and I think it even has sample invoices that they can use. So I highly recommend that they visit this webpage. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to briefly touch on hospitality because this seems to be a huge issue on our campus, and I hope that I can bring some clarity to those of you who have lots of questions regarding this topic. Hospitality, if you read the hospitality policy, does not just include meals and beverages, and I think that that has been a common thought on our campus, that that's what it is. So I kind of want to let you all know that it's not just food and beverage. It does include additional items. Some of those additional items are event decor, event supplies, and promotional items. So if you have any questions regarding that, let me know and we'll discuss that in more detail. But I just wanted to bring your attention to that. Next slide, Jay. One other thing that we've noticed recently is on the hospitality policy, it states what the per meal maximum is, and I've included this chart here for you. I think some of the campus personnel might be forgetting this, and we don't want you to have to pay the remaining balance out of your own pocketbook. We want to make sure that you're following these per meal maximums so that we can make sure that CSUSB is paying the bill, or any of the auxiliaries is paying the bill, not you individually. So I just want you to revisit the hospitality policy or refer to this slide once this is emailed out, and make sure you're staying within these per meal maximums. And I also want to make sure you know that the per meals is not just for food and beverages. It's total cost of food, beverages, labor, sales tax, delivery fees, and any other service fees. So anything related to the catering, basically. Next slide. Here's an example. So let's say Chartwheels bills us $1,000, and you've stated that you've invited 20 guests. The average cost per person is $50. So if you're looking at this chart, and I'm sorry, I don't have a mouse pointer so you can see, but if you're looking at this chart, it looks like the only meals that you'll be able to afford to pay for are dinner, and it has to be using the operating fund, state fund, or philanthropic fund, because every other meal on here is below that $50 limit, and you're just not allowed to use it per the hospitality policy. So please make sure that you're referring to the per meal maximums before you go out and hire a caterer. Next slide.
Before we actually advance to the next slide, there is a note in the chat about making sure that the hospitality form is completed, not the pre-approval form, and that's from Robin in procurement.
Okay. Okay, so I also
I didn't mean to throw you off, Amber.
You did, sorry, Jay, but you did. The documentation required when submitting a hospitality form. I just wanted to let you guys know that this is a common question as well as, okay, I'm submitting the hospitality form. I've got my receipts, I've got my invoice, but I don't know what else I need to include. So I just want to make sure that you all know what you need to include. The hospitality form, whether it be an auxiliary form or a state form, Jay and I, just to kind of touch on that, are also working on a new hospitality form, but that's to come in the future. And so you'll have one form moving forward. It won't be an auxiliary versus a state, but you'll need the hospitality form. Make sure that you're stating the business purpose. So whatever the business purposes to whether it's the university or one of the auxiliaries, an itemized receipt or an itemized invoice if you're using campus catering. And then we need the agenda, a flyer, or an invitation. So basically we need to be able to substantiate that that event took place. And then we need the list of attendees and affiliations. Next slide, Jay. Okay, the last, I think this is one of my last slides, but one of the things I want to touch on too is the what's it considered an acceptable list of attendees. What's very common is we'll get first names, we'll just get last names, we'll get a first initial, last name. We'll say that they're a student, we get a student ID, and sometimes we do accept student ID, so I don't want to say that that's not what we don't accept. They'll just put on their guest speaker, they'll say plus 5 additional people. We need a true list of attendees. So we need to know their first name, last name, what do they do on our campus, possibly what department they're from as well. So you'll see here on the right what we're expecting when we see a acceptable list of attendees. So Joe Smith, faculty from this specific college. Karen Grace, department chair from this specific college. Jessica Park, they're a student, but they're a CSUSB student. That's even clearer to us. If you wanted to put the student ID, that would be great as well. John Doe, this is a guest speaker. Amber Schneck, accounts payable, that's the department I work in. If you are hosting a large scale event, such as commencement, we ask that you don't need to give us the list of attendees because we know that that can be in the hundreds. We're just asking that you justify on the form, you know, students, staff, faculty, and outside guests were in attendance due to the large number of attendees. A sign-in sheet was not provided, but we do need that stated on the form, or we need it stated as an attachment in the documentation that you submit. Because without that, we don't know, and we're going to turn around and we're going to ask you for you to state that information to us so that we can include it as part of the packet. Next slide, Jay. Oh, that was my last slide. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, let's go back to what Robin had. Robin, do you want to ask your question live so we can make sure we get it addressed for you properly? Let's see. Can we unmute Robin?
Bobby, you're able to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. I just wanted to mention it seems like there's a couple versions of the hospitality form floating around. And the one on the AP website is the one we require.
Yeah, and that's the stateside form. So if it's a stateside purchase, then you would use that stateside form. So on our website, on the accounts payable website, there's a forms menu. And there's an auxiliary version, and then there's a stateside version. So what Robin's talking about, anything going through the procurement department for the stateside or philanthropic, that's the form that you should be using. And we're going to be moving toward a new updated form that will be hopefully a lot easier to fill out and give you more express information when you complete it. We're going to be rolling that out very soon. So we'll be back in touch with everybody to kind of show them what the form looks like and how to fill it out and where to get it. And it will be a unified form between both the auxiliary and the stateside, so there's no confusion. So Robin, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else?
Jay, I did see a question in the chat, not sure if it was already answered, but from Angela Garcia, does accounts payable still contact vendors to request the payee data record forms when it is not attached to the rec or PO? Is it now the responsibility of the department ASCs submitting the requisition in the beginning?
Are you talking about the 204 or the W9 or 204 form?
She doesn't state in there, but oh, there she is. Yes, the 204.
Okay, so yes, that's actually the accounts payable department's responsibility. I think in the past, the vendors have sent it to the individuals who are engaging with that vendor to conduct business. If you receive it, then you should forward it to accounts payable or with your requisition. But realistically, it's really up to us to obtain that information. So we really prefer that we obtain the W9 204 form because there's confidential data on it. We don't really want people's social security numbers floating around on campus. So realistically, we should be requesting that. If you get anyone from our staff asking you for that information, we may be asking if you received it. And if you have, you can send it to us. But realistically, we should be requesting it. So if someone on my team asks you to get a 204 or W9, refer them back to me.
Thanks, Jay. And also, is the hospitality form required for non-food items?
Yes. So if it's hospitality related, it's required.
Great, thanks. I'm not seeing any other questions at this time.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, everybody. So let's move on to Mona, and she will give us some travel do's and don'ts. So Mona, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Jay. And hello, everyone. Can we have the next slide, like the first slide? Okay, so today I'm taking this forum to discuss like what needs to be done when you are anticipating that you are going to travel on university business. A lot of you may know this, I'm sure, but I just thought that this is a good time for me to, just repeat what I actually say in my trainings. What needs to be done when you are actually planning your travel? So when you anticipate that there is going to be a business travel, that you will be attending a conference, very soon, the first thing that you need to do is to submit a travel request authorization in Concur before you are traveling. And just to talk about quickly about what is a travel request authorization. A travel request authorization is basically something that, the approval that you are taking, that you will be going for a business, trip. This request authorization is actually routed through your department approvers. They're looking at your travel. They're looking at like what are going to be your anticipated expenses in your request. So once that is approved, then that means, yes, you are ready to, go for your trip. And that's the first thing that you need to, submit in Concur when you anticipate there is a travel that is coming up for business that you'll be traveling. So that's the first thing that you need to do when you are, planning for your travel. Then what's the next step? So once the travel request is approved, that means you are approved officially, then you are ready to make your reservations. Like if you need to do booking your airfare, book your hotel, book any conference registration, etc. These are like things that you need to go ahead and start doing that once your request is approved. Can I go to the next slide, Jay? And then, so before you are traveling, what you need to know. So it's very ideal, and it is like something that you should know, that what you need to know about the policies. Okay, what are my like what would be my lodging, what would be my meal expenses, what is the rate? Because we don't want you to go for your trip and then you spend on it, and then you come back and you realize that, oh, this was something that I will not be reimbursed for. So I really want all of you to actually go through our travel policy. It has been updated. It is posted on our website, csusb.edu/travel. specific thing that I want to highlight here, as you can see, is the receipt requirements. We do require itemized receipts for any expense that is $25 or more. And when I say itemized receipt for meals, it is something that, that shows the food which is ordered when it is $25 or more. So basically there are receipts where you can see that, just the amount is mentioned. This is not an itemized receipt. An itemized receipt is something where you see that the food is ordered if your meal expense is $25 or more. And the reason for that is CSU policy do not allow alcohol reimbursement. And that's why we want to see that, if what the meals are that you have ordered. Again, and Jay can touch on this about the receipt requirement. Very soon we are coming up, we are trying to exceed the meal reimbursement. Jay, you want to talk about it quickly?
Yeah, so what Mona's talking about is the $25 limit. So anything $25 or more requires a receipt attached. IRS regulations are different, and the Chancellor's office is different. It matches the IRS rate. So we currently have it written into our policy. And so we're working on updating the travel policy, and we're going to recommend that we follow the IRS rate, and that's $75. Now that means just the receipt is required for anything 75 or more. And of course, that has to go through the President's Cabinet and Admin Council to be approved. So we'll be proposing that we change that language in the updated travel policy.
Thank you, Jay. May I go to the next slide? Okay. So while on your trip, some quick tips that I want to discuss is, taking photos of your receipt using your smartphone. We do have the process of, how you can add your email ID into Concur and how to get that verified. When you add your email ID into your Concur profile and you verify that email ID, you can actually take a picture from your smartphone. And if that verified email ID is in your smartphone, you can send that picture to receipts@concur.com, and Concur will store those receipts in their profile. I want to repeat this because a lot of you come back and say that, okay, my hard copy got lost. I don't have the receipts. So everyone nowadays uses smartphone. So please utilize that, benefit of that option that to make your email ID, add and verified into your Concur profile. And you can also take photos of your receipts using the Concur app on your mobile device and your smart device. If you have an iPad, you can actually go to your app store. If some of you are using Apple, some of you are using Android phone, this Concur app is available in all the app stores. So use that, download that app into your phone. I mean, logging in is pretty easy. You need to log in with your CSUSB email ID and a password. If you are logging in for the first time, you may have to set up your password when you're doing it for the first time. And then once you have the app, it works really excellent because, if you have a hard copy, open your app, there is a barcode that scans the receipts. And once the receipts are scanned, it automatically goes into your profile. So when you're back from your trip, you log into Concur, you will see all the receipts are stored into under available expenses, so that you don't have to do the, going with your hard copies, going to the printer, scanning them and saving it in your desktop or your laptop. You no longer have to do that. So while on your trip, you can utilize this. Next slide. Okay. Now completing your expense report. This is something that you do when you come back from your trip. Now what you need to do is basically you want to reconcile your trip, because now you want to get reimbursed for whatever you spend out of pocket. And at the same time, you need to reconcile your expenses. Some of the expenses may be prepaid that have been paid by the university, like for example, airfare that is paid through Concur, and registration fees paid through a pro card. So a lot of employees think that, okay, I am just thinking about my own out-of-pocket expenses. I just need to submit my expense report and just add my out-of-pocket expenses because the only thing I care for is my reimbursement. But we really want that employees account for all the expenses that the university have paid, including those prepaid expenses that you haven't paid out of your pocket, and of course, whatever you paid out of your pocket, because everything needs to be accountable. And so when you are back from your trip, start by creating the expense report from your approved travel request. And now with the new user interface, if many of you might have attended my trainings, and you have seen that with the new user interface, it brings on all the previous whatever travel request on your before you have traveled, you have added your anticipated expenses. Those are actually carried forward into your expense report. In the earlier interface, that option was not available. So now with the new user interface, it is bringing in all your anticipated expenses. You just have to go in and edit the information in there. And put in your, attach your receipts, attach any itemized receipts that needs, which is $25 or more. Remember to change like the payment type, like for the prepaid expenses, like airfare, registration fees, you need to update and change it to university paid. If it is done through a pro card, like the registration fees, make sure that change it to pro card, all the payment types. And then this is how you will, complete your expense report. Next slide. Okay, so I want to quickly touch on like traveler don'ts, which is something that that is not reimbursable. Like this is a very high level information that I'm giving in here because there's a common things that comes up, and a lot of employees may not be aware of that. So the first thing is the car rental insurance. A lot of employees here use car rental, but I want to let everyone know that insurance is something that is not covered per policy. If you book and rental car through Enterprise and National, the insurance is already paid for. So I always tell employees that you can go through, even if it is something like a business trip, or the insurance is already included in it. But sometimes when you go outside of National and Enterprise, and you, let's say, go with LMO, Hertz, etc., there is a insurance amount that is included into your rental expense. Some of them are identified as LDW. Those are the terminologies. These are actually insurances which are not covered by the university. So please make sure that when you are submitting your expense for your car rental, take out the insurance charge that has been included, and apart from that, just exclude that amount, and the rest of the amount you can, ask for reimbursement. The second point is for early bird fees for airfare. Some of the airline charges, there are some special seating fees, some early bird fees. Those are not reimbursable per policy. The third point is alcohol. I think mentioned it. Alcohol is not reimbursable. And personal item purchases. Those are items that are not reimbursable. The other thing very common that I am seeing nowadays is the car rental booking. And so I thought I will just emphasize on, because this is a very common thing that I'm seeing these days. And this is like, do not book car rental using the direct billing account unless a travel request is submitted and approved in Concur first. So a lot of you here know and is aware that we do have a direct billing account for car rental. So whenever you are going on university business, if you are going on university business, we do have a direct billing account where you can charge it to the direct billing account, and you don't have to pay out of your pocket. And of course, you can use that option, and that option is available. However, you need to complete a travel request in Concur and that should be approved before you go ahead and do the booking. And I have seen a lot of employees are going for university business like field trip, etc. And I see car rentals are already booked. Unfortunately, the system does allows to go through. If you book it through Concur, through Enterprise, we do ask for a approved request ID. Sometimes even if you are not providing that number, the booking goes through. I want to say that this is very important that you submit a request in Concur and should be approved before you go ahead and book your car rental booking using the direct billing account. The second point I want to talk about is do not use car rentals to ship items, move furniture, etc. You need to use the mailroom for assistance in shipping goods or facilities for relocating furnishings. Rental cars and vans are to be used to transport human beings and their luggage, not for shipping goods. So please use the car rental direct billing account only when it is an approved business trip. And that approved business, it basically means that you already have submitted a request in Concur and it is approved. For other kind of, car rentals, like I mentioned, shipping item and moving furniture, you can reach out directly to support services. Is that right, Jay?
Yes, that's correct. So if there's things that you need to move or ship, please contact the mailroom first, and then they will kind of go through that with you. If it's moving furniture to another facility, then facilities may be able to assist in that. But rental cars are not the way to go with that.
Thank you. Next slide, Jay. And I see a lot of questions coming up on the chat, question and answer. So I'm going to cover all those questions. We'll go through it once I'm done with my final slide. So I'm not avoiding you all, but we'll come back to all of your question answers at the end of my slide. The next I want to talk about is for travel interagency financial transaction process, as known as IFT process. The reason I want to talk about is because we are in spring. This is the time when we have a lot of conferences that our campus will be hosting, like the CSU conference coming up, hosted by Chancellor's Office. And then we'll have a lot of other conferences because this is the time. And this is the time when other CSU employees will come to our campus. Some of our employees will go to see other CSU campus to attend those conferences. So there is a lot of questions that I get on how we handle those kind of reimbursement. So those kind of reimbursement, like for example, employees from any other CSU campus should file their expense reports through their home campus for reimbursement. Now, on that, I want to just give an example. Like, for example, I am a CSU employee of San Bernardino, and I am going to a conference at CSU Fullerton. So the first thing that needs to be done is that I will complete my expense report like how we do in our campus. That is, I will do my travel request, submit it, and once I'm back from the conference, I will do my expense report in Concur. So that's the first thing that needs to be done. Like I will follow the process of our campus, how we do our expense report. And then once that is done, I will be initiating the IFT process, which is like I'll complete the IFT form and initiate it so that CSU Fullerton, now once they get that IFT form, they will transfer the funds to CSUSB. So that's basically the process of IFT processes. I get a lot of questions on that. So that's why I wanted to talk about it more. I know I'll have a lot of questions on this. So this is how we will follow it. So it's the same thing when we go from here, it's a vice versa. So if from other campuses are coming to our campus, they will follow the same process. Like let's say someone from CSU Fullerton or CSU Long Beach is coming to our campus to attend a conference. They will do their expense report once they're back. They will do their expense report on their home campus. They will do whatever they follow. They submit their expense report. Once that is done, they will initiate the IFT form. They'll fill up the form and submit it to us, and our campus will then transfer the funds to that particular campus. So that's basically the process of how we handle the IFT process.
Yeah,
and,
so I want to quickly, Mona, I want to quickly kind of add to that. So if somebody's coming here to visit us to go through, say, a seminar or something that we're presenting, they would normally just go through their home campus to file their expense report. If they're coming to present something to us and our campus is paying for it, is when you would use this IFT process. So
yes.
what we would not want to do is we would not want to reimburse another campus employee's expenses on our campus because our campus is paying for it. They would be reimbursed for their home campus, and then their home campus would bill us through the IFT process for that, and then we would pay that campus. So we're kind of running short on time here, so I don't want to cut you off, Mona. We can get to some of the questions here.
Sure.
But if you have any questions about the IFT process, please feel free to call me and we'll walk through that scenario more in depth with you.
Thank you, Jay.
So I know we have some questions in the chat, and I've been answering chat, and I didn't realize that I guess not everyone can see my answers. Davina had asked a question about requisitions being returned to departments for not including the 204 form. And it would be helpful to make sure both offices are on the same page. So Davina, thank you. Yes, I will be talking with procurement, and I appreciate you alerting me that that's happening. So that should not actually happen. So I'll work with procurement on that. And then Josephine asked about is there a video or handout on moving expenses for our incoming faculty? There is a policy stated online. The moving and relocation policy is actually owned by Human Resources. So unfortunately, if you ask myself or Mona questions about moving expenses, all we actually do is facilitate the reimbursement of payment. We won't know whether or not you can transport something, or if there's additional costs for children or pets or things like that, that would actually have to be answered by Human Resources. So I would encourage you to reach out to Human Resources with those kinds of questions. And then Vicky says here, greetings, how are cash advances dispersed once approved? So I'll let you answer that question, Mona.
Okay, so cash advances, once it is approved, basically it goes out either as a direct deposit or through a physical check. If we don't have the option of direct deposit on the auxiliary side, so it is basically direct deposit for the state side. So does that answer your question? Are attendees able to unmute and basically reply?
So Angela has a question in Q&A. Amber, can you see that? Can you read that question to me?
Yeah. So we will be able to use the new corporate credit card for paying Concur travel requests, correct? Also, do you have all of this information in a Concur travel guidebook or virtual training that I can send to my faculty to make sure they take the training?
Yes, so we are rolling out the new corporate card, and you can use it to book travel. You can book your hotel with it. You can use it for travel as well as purchasing supplies. So it's not only just a P card, it's also a travel card. So that's why we're referring to it as a corporate card. When we begin rolling this out, every card holder will have to attend a meeting where we'll kind of do an orientation about how it works. You'll apply formally in the application, in the Concur application, and then your card will be ordered. Then you'll return to a training class to show you how to reconcile. And then, of course, we have tutorials available